Let's put down an unpack node to recover our attributes and wire that up to the DOP import. On here, let's visualize the points. So because we unpack them, they show up correctly. Now, if we look at the normals, remember that we corrected that. They're all pointing in the same direction for each building. That's exactly correct. And if we right-click on the unpack node and watch the spreadsheet, we can see that we have building height back, building ID is back. It tells us that it's houses, so that's all good. Let's also double check that the up attribute's still there. Let's close this. And at the bottom here, we should have this pointer visualization. Right-click it, and if you have up there, click that, and it should show. In my case, they're yellow, and they're pointing up, so that's correct. If you haven't saved your settings before, you might not have this up anymore. In case that is the case, move your mouse pointer into the view, hit D, visualizers. Let's construct it again together. So I have it here. Otherwise, you can go to the plus, set a marker. And then you get this window. You can say name is up, label is up, set the style to vector. And then you can say, in my case, let's give it a purple color just to differentiate it from the other one. And in my case, it automatically turns the name into up2 because I've already got one. And of course, set up in the attribute. That should pick it up. Now, if we close that, you should be able to find it in your visualizers tab. So in my case, I have 2 now. I'm just going to remove the second one that I had, delete. All right, let's move on. Now, the next node we're going to drop down is a pack node again. This might seem silly, but it actually makes sense. We had to unpack these to actually get the attributes we had back, and now we're going to repack them. If we look at our DOP import and we right-click and go for the spreadsheet, we can see in our left column that I have 32 points. And if we go to the primitives tab, I can see that I have a name attribute for each. Unpacking that will have changed this, so it would have split up the faces again. If I right-click on spreadsheet for the unpack 3, I can see that I have 6 faces for each block again. So that means we can pack them by name again. On the pack 2 node, just hit name attribute. And now if we go to that spreadsheet, we should get every name only once. There we go. So that's all good. And on transfer attributes, we can find the attributes that we want to transfer. So because if we're unpacking them here, we can get the attributes back. And then on the points here, we can just store them. In our case, we're just going to hit asterisk because we want all the attributes on there. And if we middle mouse on pack 2 now, we can see that we have 33 points as we should. And we have all our point attributes there, including the name on primitive. So now what we want to do, because we want to be left with a point cloud all the way towards the end, is we're going to drop down a delete node. And from that delete node, we're going to delete the actual primitives from around the points. So visualize that, and let's color it red. And now we can leave the entity at primitives. And in the pattern, just say everything. So asterisk. But at the bottom, we can tick on the box for keep points. And what now happens is we have the actual centroids for each building still left there. And on those points, we have the attributes that we need. And you can see their normals are still there, so their rotational values are also intact. The same would go if we would visualize up. It's all still there, and up and normal together can form an orient attribute so that the buildings know exactly how to rotate. Now, if you remember, we created an original block position before, because of course we want to at some point be able to move these points back to their original position. We're going to have to transfer that attribute back from the incoming geometry for the city block. So let's put down an attribute copy. Let's have a look at the inputs. The left input is geometry to copy attributes to, and right is where to copy attributes from. So we're going to copy them to the point cloud we just created. And the right input, we're going to stick into the first node up here, into the import city blocks. Because if we look at import city blocks, we can see that we have an original block position on the point attributes, original block position. So looking at our attribute copy, let's bring it in line with the delete node. We can then define which attribute to copy. Let's remove CD and drop down that list and find original block position. So this will now be added to the attributes we've already had. So now as one final step, we're going to put down a point VOP. Let's have a look from this side. we can see that our points are not entirely set at 0, but at some point we're going to be instanting the buildings on top of the points, whereas these are the centroids. So what we want to do is move them all down to 0. We've done that before, so let's wire up the point VOP, visualize it, and jump inside. We're going to put down a vector to float and a float to vector, same as the pop attract. X and Z we can wire up. The position on the left goes into the vector to float, and the float to vector goes into the position on the right. We've plugged nothing into Y, so that assumes 0, but let's be precise again. Drop down a constant, leave that at 0, and plug that into the Y component. And you can see that we now have our points at Y as we need them to be. Let's jump back up. So we are now looking at a point cloud for a single city block. Let's drop down a null node again, wire that up and color it green. I'm going to visualize it, and I'm going to call it out city block point cloud. And that's what we need. So at some point these blocks combined will form the city, but before that I will run you through a recap in the next clip. After that, in the main simulation part 2, we will continue building our city block simulation system, starting with adding in extra buildings to fill up the open spaces that appear in the center of each block after all the buildings have been attracted to the edges.